Okay, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock on Tuesday, July 26th of 2022. And I'm excited to say this is our first meeting of the Sandpoint Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. I'm now calling it to order. So first thing, let's do a roll call. And just for the record, I'm Heather Upton. I'm the Arts and Historic Preservation Officer, presiding at the City of Sandpoint Council Chambers, which is at 1123 Lake Street in Sandpoint, Idaho. And if you'll all, in terms of the commission members, just say present or absent. So Barry Burgess. Here. Perfect. Carol Kowalczyk. Very good. Present. Ellie Sesmes. Present. Hannah Combs. Present. Karen Weinemeyer. We don't have. Present. Excuse me. Mike Lithgow.
I don't see him in attendance yet. He might come in late though.
Perfect. Rick Decker.
Present.
Stephen Garvin.
Present.
And Woody Sherwood.
Present.
Fantastic. So traditionally we'll have the general commission announcements and reports, but this is our first meeting. So we're going to kind of cruise through that, along with we do not have any meeting minutes to approve. We do not have old business. So we are going to move right into new business. And for today, we do not have the opportunity for public comment. That might be something that we will do in the future, but we just have quite a few things to go over for today. So what I'd like to talk about would be the introduction to the commission. And many of you have been on our city commissions before, and some of you may not. So I'm just kind of going to go through our policies, procedures, open meeting law. I know it can be a little intimidating that we are in this conference room and we're being filmed. All of this goes on a YouTube channel. So it's just something we need to consider when we're having these conversations, but it's really important for me that we feel comfortable being able to share our ideas and have fun and really kind of enjoy this process. So hopefully we can kind of, move past some of those things. But, the reasons why we're being filmed and we're in this space is it all goes down to open meeting law. And that's kind of a whole can of worms. And I'm not going to go into detail about it in this meeting. I'm new with being in city government, so I'm still learning myself. And so what I'm going to actually be doing is working with our city attorney to make sure that I'm clearly understanding what open meeting law is. I know we've had questions about, emailing each other and, meeting outside of official meetings. Those are things that I'm looking forward to answering at a future meeting. But what I will do for fun homework is send you in an email some links to what open meeting law is so you can do some research on our own. And really what this is to protect you guys, and it's to protect the city, and it's really to make sure that we're not in a litigious situation in general. And I also provided with you today the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. So this is the official section about our commission, and it just goes over the creation of it, the purpose, the rules, and everything they're meeting, the terms. So you can go ahead and take that home. Always feel free to contact me with questions. Historically, we had Arts Commission with the city and we had Historic Preservation Commission with the city. And I was on Historic Preservation Commission for 2 terms, so that was over 6 years. And I was really excited when we started working with the Arts Commission and doing these synergetic projects like the Sgcu wrap boxes. And I think through that moment, we found out that we can really work well together. And I believe that we're stronger when we have more minds working on the big picture too. There also is a great opportunity to be able to disperse funding through many sources that impact those key areas for our community too. So I'm really excited about the emergence of the two commissions. In addition, in the past, we both had our loved city advisors that were part of planning. And we had Aaron and of course, Ryan Shea, Aaron Qualls, and they, what kind of happened was they had their main job, which was like very all consuming. And then they had to try to, be a clerk at these other meetings. And the great news is that the city has taken such a focus on these three areas that they hired me. And this is among all these duties that I have at the city, it's my main focus to be able to implement all the things that we talk about. And, you guys are the advisory committee. So you'll be advising, you all have special things in your wheelhouse, and you're experts in your areas. And so you will be advising city council on these particular subjects, and then they will be the final vote on that. So where before the chair ran the meetings, I'll be running the meetings and I'll be working with the chair. And then we'll also be having a co-chair that will be supporting the chair when the chair isn't available. And I am sorry we don't have that on here for an election of a chair. That will be for the next meeting. We'll be electing a co-chair.
So we'll do both of it next time, or?
We'll do the co-chair next time. We're going to elect the chair this time.
Oh, okay.
Cami and Amla, am I saying that? Amit, excuse me, not like omelet. She's incredible. She's an amazing artist. And in fact, we are lucky enough to have your canon of work in City Hall. So if you ever want to take a look, I just installed it. Truly gifted. Great. I'm so excited.
Beautiful.
And you've been with the city for 22 years.
I think I'm pretty close. Yeah. I know it's over 20. I think I'm around 22.
So we have an expert on how this stuff works too. So this is kind of my first rodeo running an official meeting. So please excuse me, I'm learning too. So Cami's going to chime in if I miss something or need to do something. I will eventually become so amazing at all the official city goodies, but we're definitely going to get there together. So does anybody have any questions about all of that in particular? Perfect. My goal is to keep the meetings to an hour, and I envision that we would have subcommittees of people that are interested in that particular project join together. I'm going to be figuring out what that looks like. Does it have to have a quorum? Does it not? And we'll meet in a special room accordingly. So I just thought otherwise meetings could probably go on for 2 to 3 hours because all of our projects are so in depth and really, really important.
Oh, is Mike here?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mike.
There he is.
Hi, Mike.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. I was having a little technical difficulties, but I'm on, so all good.
Okay. Mike, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm Heather, by the way. It's been a pleasure emailing you. It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you virtually. Yeah, my name is Mike Lithgow. I'm the Information and Outreach Coordinator and Policy Analyst for the Kalispel Tribe's Natural Resources Department. And I'm excited to be on this commission. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're so excited to have you. Okay, well, perfect. So we were just talking about kind of the outline of how the commission works, and I'm going to send you some documents of our policies and documents on open meeting law. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of city governments and so forth, so you're familiar with all of those things. So I'd like to move on to the second order of new business, which will be continuing arts and historic preservation projects. So those are the Sgcu utility box wraps. And we call them that because STCU was a generous sponsor of those wraps. They're vinyl wraps that are on our utility boxes. Half of them are art, half of them are historic preservation photos that go back to truly that location or activity in that area. So we've done the first phase, the second phase, and now we are on the third phase. Since the commission's disbanded, Linda, who was in charge of that project here at the city, also had another opportunity that she took. So I'm going down the rabbit hole and picking up on phase 3. My understanding with that project is that we've selected the artists and the historic photos. So I just need to get funding for that. Does anybody have any comment to that?
No, I think there was one additional one that had asked to be included in it. It wasn't in the initial things, and that was outside of what was Beaton Basil,
Oh, okay.
Gloria Waterhouse's property. And
Okay.
we said we would take it up, and then everything happened.
Okay, perfect.
But that's just a small additional part.
People love that project. I really
Yes.
feel like it's impactful and I love that it's sponsored. So that's a utility box wrap. So I'll come back to you in the next meeting with a slideshow of it for those who aren't familiar and what we're looking at for artists and what we're looking at for the photos as well. And we'll review that and then I'll approach STCU and obtain that funding. So it'll be nice to wrap that up. I have had a couple of community people reach out and say, I believe I was selected. Where is it? So it's going to be great to get that on its way. The second thing is the Silver Box Public Art Project. I have one sculpture that belongs to an artist, Dennis, I'm trying to remember his last name, Bernowski.
Oh, yeah.
I'm meeting with him tomorrow morning at 8:30 to install it. And so we will currently have no outstanding contracts with artists for that project. And so you all know, and I might have one of you talk about it in more depth, but the Silver Box project is an opportunity for artists to have a rotating display of art out there for sale, and they get $1,000 stipend. It's for a year. And the big thing is the art needed to work well in that space and under certain temperatures that Sandpoint undergoes. So would anybody like to talk to that program a little bit more? I know that it's kind of had its ups and downs a little bit maybe, or?
Well, if I may, the Silver Box project started probably 6 years ago as a project that was put forth to the commission. It was kind of modeled off the Plinth project in Olympia. And in Olympia, they actually have an art on one project where they actually have a contest and they have public input, and the city actually buys a piece that the public votes on. So when we first originally wanted to do that project, that was the model that we used. When we got the first RFP back, we found that we didn't have a large number of public art pieces, and it was immediately clear that if the city was required to purchase one of those, it might not be in the best interest of the city to spend the money on those particular projects. So we rejected all of the submissions for that first RFP, and we went back to the drawing board, and we really ended up simplifying the box project to where now it's a straight art on loan. I think we tried it a second time with a $500 honorarium, and we didn't, again, plus we were restricted to very local, thinking that was going to be great, but we didn't get a lot of submissions. And so we went back to the drawing board again, raised the honorarium to $1,000 for the year. And Also, the city council directed us to expand to regional artists. I think in the 4 states in the corner there, the Northwest, and plus Montana. And so actually that ended up being a really good call. We got a lot of inputs. We got a lot of great submissions. We ended up choosing 3. That was a subcommittee that chose those 3 that included some people from the community. And we had some really great submissions. The thing about the boxes is, I don't know if everybody knows where they're at. There's one by the post office. There's one next to where the farmer's market is. And then there's one up on the same street, Oak, on 5th. And each of the boxes is a different size. So when we're picking the art that goes on those boxes, there's those considerations as well, size, visibility, things like that. So the last 2 times that we put the RFP out, we had really great response, and I think we had really great art. Some of you might remember, what was the one in front of the post office, the colorful bird?
The
What was
funky
that?
chicken.
The funky chicken. That was, either you loved it or you hated it.
Community expression.
Yes, but I think it was a great
Yeah.
piece to get people talking.
Mhm.
That particular piece was made out of wood, and it did have some issues over the course of the year. So when we picked up the next year, we definitely took that in consideration, and city council was very adamant that they wanted pieces that would endure and not fall apart. So that's obviously something that has to be considered.
Mhm.
And, people will submit. I mean, we had someone submit paper mache,
Oh, gosh.
to
And
this
some were
call.
too small and some were just way too small. for
Yeah,
the
so,
print.
there's gonna be that. And,
Yeah.
hopefully you've put the call out to enough. We use Cafe both those times and got a really good response. And we're able to pick it, the 3 that were up there. And so, of course, there hasn't been any well, there's one piece up,
Yeah, the
Research.
Native American.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the other 2 actually, I think they did their
Installed.
year, and then those artists took their items, so.
Well, know that we don't have to continue with that program. So I think it's a good idea for us to have a conversation about it. And I mean, we could have those placed in a different area and have permanent installations on them. So I think that, and we don't have to decide, obviously today it's not an action item, but let's kind of really wrap our minds around that program and think about how effective is that? Because we have a lot of really exciting things happening and our time is all very valuable. And so we want to just make sure that is really the impact that we want to be putting our time into. So something to consider. Thank you so much for giving us an overview on that.
Well, one other point is, now that we have that RFP kind of dialed in,
Mhm.
I actually don't think it will be that time consuming, now that we've done the work.
We've kind of we've gotten to that point where we've figured out all kind of the bugs and everything like that.
I think the last one was actually, I mean, I'd have to ask Aaron, but I feel like it was very,
Perfect.
very fast and efficient.
And we might have some new emerging artists in our community with all this growth that could be really fun to highlight too.
I think
So
so.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that at the next meeting. So I'll present the SGCU phase. We'll have a further discussion on the Silver Box Public Art Project. And then we have the historic walking tour brochure. This is a project that I think is amazing. Would you like to pull it up, Steve?
Yep.
It's done by the Historic Preservation Commission in the museum. I believe it's one of the most comprehensive historic resources out there. It's beautifully done. There's a downtown tour, historic tour, walking tour. There's a residential historic walking tour. At the museum, we use it all the time as a resource. It's free to the public. The Historic Preservation Commission historically were not able, we didn't have funding coming in, so we would work with SGCU grants, and then we hustled the streets and did ads to be able to pay for this. So I believe, Steve, we worked with certified local government grants
Yes.
through State Idaho Preservation Office to be able to get grant funding for this.
Which was part of it, and then we raised the rest of it. This is the third revised edition.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to add to that, when this has been seen by folks outside of Sandpoint as well, they were very impressed for the size of our city that we had something as well done as this. And I took
Oh, wonderful
about 40
feedback.
of them to the National Preservation Commission's conference and gave them out to people there and everything too, just to spread the word and show them what we were doing here in Sandpoint.
Perfect. Rick, actually, I got
Yeah, he did the
connected with
digital-
you because you were so generous and your team to put this on a digital platform so people could do what?
On the
remind
city's
me.
website.
Yeah, so it was on the
Yeah.
city's website and then we used,
Pocket Space. is that
yeah,
up? Yeah.
that
I
was
think
just
that's
like,
Still out there.
I know, it seems like just a moment ago, but I think it's been quite a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So this,
Just to mention
Yeah.
also, the National Historic Registered District is outlined on the map as well. And then there's other sites, it's almost a third set that are done in a different color and coded. And I think what's so great too is there's illustrations and at least a paragraph about each of them.
Really
And
fun
we've had to
history.
take out some buildings and replace some.
yeah, so it's a second printing because what happens sometimes with historic buildings. They change and morph and they no longer qualify.
We did 3,500 for this third printing before the pandemic. So we thought, well, they'll last till about that fall. Well, of course, the pandemic stretched everything out. So we think there's a few more boxes still in one of the storage boxes out here in the
I
parking lot.
have, I believe I have 2 boxes
Oh, there
here,
might
full
not-
boxes.
Okay, there might not be more then, or there might be
Yeah.
1 or 2, and I have a box still,
So I think we have enough to get us through, but that's one thing.
certainly through this year.
Yeah, we'll want to find funding for and continue. This is, I'm a big idea person, and so you always have to rein me in, but I think that this has been so successful and it's such a valuable thing for our community. I could see expansion on this. I don't know, Rick, you're kind of the expert with this field, but QR codes or something like that. It's like, how can we bring this to that next level? Maybe we need more interpretive signage, that sort of thing. Maybe we need to
More
reevaluate
tours.
location, more
You mentioned,
tours.
yeah, well,
The commission, Steve facilitated so many wonderful tours to the community. And that kind of goes into something else we'll talk about, but we will be doing some really exciting programming here at the city that could potentially be fundraising opportunities, and walking tours would qualify for that. So we'll talk more at a later time about that. But thinking about walking tours and highlighting the wonderful elements of our community and art, maybe we should consider for the future doing something like this for our public art.
Well, actually, we had,
Perfect. There's
That on our
no
list
new
of things
ideas.
in fact, I have made an inventory list of
So
all of our
good.
pieces. So we are, well on our way.
I love that.
and does that include murals, sculptures, every kind of form?
Mhm.
Great.
I also wanted to add that the Parks and Rec Department, for our programming side of things, we were approached by a woman, and I'm blanking out her name at the moment, but she was putting together local geocaching and adventure labs. And one of the ones that she created was an art tour adventure lab. And so we put that information in our program booklet as something that people can download the app and go. And I think it only had like 10 sites or something.
Actually, I helped Lynn with that.
Oh, great.
Oh, good. Oh, she's. a
So,
good hand.
Yeah, they were wanting to come to us,
yeah,
to
we're,
our outside piano.
Mhm.
I
yeah,
love it.
That's great.
it's good stuff.
Well, I was so thankful. Excuse me, Ellie and Carol, did you help with the inventory too? The public art
did.
Oh, yeah.
inventory?
I did.
For both of you to put that together. It has been so helpful for me to understand. And it's things that I had like walked by, but it really put it into perspective.
Well, you don't realize how much we have. until you
Right,
see the inventory.
exactly.
Yeah.
And where it's placed too. And so that would be helpful. I can distribute that. So we
Okay.
all have a great understanding of our public art. And, you know, I'm kind of, the way that I think big picture to be able to understand the weeds. So know that I want you guys to be open with your ideas. And if you feel like we have a great art piece that's in a certain place and it could be reactivated in another, you know, there's lots of great options out there here. Like for instance, I love the scuba diver out here and it was carved from a tree that was here. Maybe we should put it at City Beach. So I'm definitely like looking at the community as a designer and a curator and thinking like, is this the perfect place for that art? Because I do believe we have great art, but you know, maybe we want to consider reconfiguring some of the spaces. And that goes back to our big picture idea about placemaking, you know, having art in where it's really doing some sort of storytelling. And so I've definitely been diving down the rabbit hole on that. So those are our projects that Arts Commission and Historic Preservation Commission had worked on that we will be moving forward and bringing into, you know, our docket here. Does anybody have any questions on those?
On this, I have a comment overall, but in a different direction,
Perfect.
whenever.
Anything that I'm missing in terms of programming that was happening and, yep, perfect.
I don't, you know, I'm not sure where to bring it up myself, so I don't know if you want to do it like a comment period or something.
Yeah,
You know,
we'll have discussions towards the end and some of it we might have to, I'm looking at
Okay.
Cami.
I'll just hold.
Yeah,
till then.
hold those thoughts and then we'll evaluate those. The next item that on the agenda is the NEA Arp Grant. So this is the National Endowment for Arts American Relief Program. This is really exciting. So this is the $150,000 that the city was granted. And so part of that funding is for my position, and we have $100,000 to be distributed through a sub-grant program to our arts organizations in the community. So I'm just thrilled about this. This is something that we need to get on right away. I have created a sub-grant that I'm going to present to you guys at the next meeting, and we'll look at. And essentially, the great thing about this grant is it's not project specific. So this is purely to help during COVID times. So this can be used for pay, for salaries, and for, you know, different things for general operations, which doesn't really happen in the art world, the grant world. So I'm really, really excited about it. It's a really important government grant. So I've taken a lot of time trying to dissect it and understand it to make sure that our sub-grant program is doing all the qualifications in terms of the end reporting that needs to be done for all of us.
And this is specifically earmarked for arts, right?
Well, yes,
Oh, okay.
but
that was my question.
what is the definition of arts, right?
Well,
That's what
in the
I
grant.
asked the National Endowment of Arts, and they came back to me and they said, it's up to you guys to define that. So I went furthermore down the rabbit hole to really try to understand this. And I actually went back to Sarah Lee, who helped put together our master plan, and which, by the way, is our guiding document. So I always have to go back to that. We're always implementing the arts, culture, and historic preservation.
Does everybody
master
have
plan.
it digitally? Did you
We'll
guys
link
have it?
that as well.
I think I do, but if not, I'll find it.
It's a beautiful
If you wanna pass it
document.
around, you can.
And it really outlines important projects for historic preservation, culture, and arts in our community. And so City Council adopted that. So that means that that's our job to activate that. And when I'm talking to Jennifer and going off on ideas, she's like, is that in your master plan? So, I mean, that is a wonderful reminder to me to always go back to that. And so So when you guys ask me a question, I'll look and make sure that it goes back to that master plan, because if it is, it's something that we can participate in doing. So Sarah Lee came up with this great answer, because I'm always thinking about how do we blend art, culture, and historic preservation together. And I believe we can, and it can always kind of be a winning thing. And so part of her definition was, for instance, if a museum was preserving a cultural collection that has to do with a cultural identity or an art collection, you know, that sort of thing, that would qualify. So what's going to happen is in the sub-grant, you know, we'll have the criteria and everything, and we'll put it out there, but the nonprofits in Sandpoint have to come to us, and they have to define what their art organization is. And then therefore we decide. And I'm not just doing standard amounts. We're going to look at these arts organizations and understand and adjust funding according to the needs of the organization in general. What that means is a lot of you are a part of powerful arts organizations, so you'll have to just not be a part. If you are applying for that grant, you'll have to excuse yourself in terms of being on the advisory board of that. I'm also looking at creating a subcommittee to help support us through this process of great community members that have a strong understanding of this realm. Does anybody have any questions on the Nea Arp Grant? I think the community will be very happy. I'm really excited about it.
It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, not always do you have really impactful funding like that. Okay, so we're just cruising through this. I love it. So the next item would be the election of the commission chair. So we'll be voting for the chair today. And so Cami, we would need a nomination process, right?
Mhm.
So to guide me through this particular process. So does anybody want to?
I guess you would just ask the commission if they want to if they want to nominate someone for chair, or if they want to nominate themselves for chair. I don't know that there's any specific
There's
rules
not a
for that.
formal. Anybody interested or would not like to nominate somebody?
I'd like to nominate Ellie. Assess this.
Perfect.
I'd be interested in being a co-chair possibly, and I believe it would be a real strengthener if we could have one person particularly more arts oriented, one more preservation oriented.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So, Ellie, are you interested? You've been nominated.
I am interested.
You're accepting the chair position.
So you should call for.
Okay.
So there's been recommendation that Ellie,
A recommendation to council.
to have Ellie be the chair
Chair.
for the commission.
Okay.
And then you call for yays and nays and.
Oh, excuse
and
me.
if they were unanimous or.
Yeah, there's actually a seconding process that goes. You're making the motion.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
icebreaker. I just wanted to make sure you guys
And
were
then-
like
and
awake.
I'll create a second on that.
We didn't get a second.
Okay. Perfect.
Then we can have discussion or we can vote for it.
Thank you.
Yes, and then the all in favor say aye. That part is the end.
Ellie,
Okay.
do you want to
Is
say
there any
anything?
discussion? Yeah.
I would be happy to continue the work that we started in the art commission, as the chair. I took over from Carol Diener when Carol chose to step down to kind of simplify her life. And, we had some great projects. I helped bring about the Celestial Sierra by Troy Pillow out there at the roundabout. We worked on the RFP all the way to completion, and it's been up for 2-3 years now.
More than
And
4 years.
it's looking beautiful. I think, that whole process was wonderful. And, I helped bring the Silver Box project from a little bit of trouble when they started under Carol's direction to, I think, a really vibrant art on loan project. You know, I compiled the inventory just on my own with the help of my fellow commissioners, and that was fabulous. And I think that's gonna work for not only the walking tour, but, you know, to upgrade the city website, you know, that's our goal. I actually also, I feel like I have a good working relationship with the mayor and council and staff. I've had good feedback from staff, and also importantly, the SURA board, because they actually control a lot of the funding that we have used in the past. You know, and actually I was in contact with staff during the pandemic, and I was the one that suggested that NEA grant.
We're so
You
thankful
know,
to you.
and luckily
Yes.
Linda is so good. She was able to make it happen. So happy. And, you know, as far as the historical portion of it, I'm a fast learner and I'm really excited. I volunteer at the museum, and I'm
Well, and you're from here. You're born and raised.
wasn't born,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
was raised. And in fact, the man in the hat right there shoveling snow is my son's great grandfather.
Oh, see, there you
We
go.
love it.
You're
Yeah.
part of our culture.
And so, you know, I feel like we have a really great opportunity here to do great things on this commission, and I'd be happy to be the chair for this next big adventure. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Any,
we'll,
any no's or abstentions?
I don't think so.
Okay,
We'll present that to council then. Perfect.
great.
And just for my records, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Carol Kowalczyk. It's that long last name.
Yeah.
3 vowels.
Okay, perfect. So this is the hardest part of the meeting, all those details, right? So then is this a good time to talk about people's
Yes.
topics of,
So basically, our goal in any meeting is to accomplish the agenda. That's the business of the city. And then I would say that the end of the meeting is a great time to discuss other items that you want to agendize for future agendas.
perfect. Okay, so does anybody have any topics that they'd like to put on the next agenda?
I guess starting efforts to a robust system and protocols for design review and some code changes and some concrete historic preservation things in the town of Sandpoint.
Okay,
Do we have a vision for Sandpoint as far as, you know, the historic ambiance or flavor that we want as an end goal, let's say in 10 years or 20 years from now, the direction that we want to take this town in, especially now with, you know, the different influences that are coming in. I think it's extremely important to introduce the newcomers to, you know, what we have in mind here, so that our vision doesn't get constantly diluted. And I think to make sure that we're communicating that well, what we come up with a vision and to see if we can inspire Sandpoint citizens to come on board with what we see. But I think it's really important to actually create something that's visible and tangible to the community.
kind of like our own mission statement for our commission almost, that we're like, is like a leading vision and top of
Absolutely.
mind thing. I like that.
And we should also go back to the master plan.
Right.
That, yeah.
I think it is helpful to look at what other towns our size have accomplished. I recently visited 2 towns that are the size of Sandpoint. One is Apalachicola, and one is St. Joe's in the Gulf Coast. And they are very much, they have the same size, and they pay incredible attention to their historic nature, and they show a huge amount of citizen pride. That's a word I'd like for everyone to really embrace, because that's what we want Sandpoint to embrace, is to own a piece of the vision and to be proud of living here because of the history also that's here. I think that's a really important part, to make sure we address that and to stir that citizen pride.
And I think it's important following that to have it be towns of our size, but in different parts of the country, not just Idaho, but Idaho where there are relevant ones. Moscow has a robust thing, for instance. Also, the NAPC is a great resource. At this last conference a couple of weeks ago, which was postponed from 2020, there were 500 people, but there's usually more like 700 or 800. 2 years hence, the next one will happen, but they've got great resources. They've got people from small towns, large cities, in between, historic architects, staff people, volunteers, commission servers. It's just a great community asset and resource for the work that we will undertake on the preservation side. And even the last session I went to on the Saturday was incorporating art into historic districts and buildings.
Absolutely. It makes so much sense. And just to comment back to those two things that Ellie stated, in the master plan, they have done so much of our homework for us. There's amazing examples of comparable, communities that we should look at.
And one of the three people from Lakota was at this,
Ah,
as well
It's
as
a good
a
sign.
guy from Idaho Shippo, Dan.
Dan Earnhardt. Hannah?
At an upcoming meeting, before we jump into any on-the-ground projects, I think it would be helpful, because it has been a while since the master plan was completed, to do sort of a bird's eye view overview of the master plan. What are the primary
Love
objectives?
that.
What are some of the timelines, if those are stated in the master plan? And then to what Steve was saying, perhaps understanding some of the resources available for us to further educate ourselves
And
on
accomplish.
the tools that we can use.
That's
as we move
brilliant.
forward.
And I think that's a great idea as a group to actually revisit that, since it has been a long time, pandemic phase. And I think that would be great, because then we'd have it much more fresh, and instead of relying on each of us to read it separately,
Yeah,
which is great too. But I think it maybe almost would be worth dedicating a meeting to that,
the cliff notes of the master plan, essentially. Very good.
since we're mandated
love
to
that.
follow.
Yeah, the school district I worked for, we had, every school district in Pennsylvania has a master plan. You don't function without one. And we all, as a teacher, we were all given copies of it. And that way, if we had a question, there it was.
Absolutely.
It was right there in front of us that we could read.
Do you guys want hard copies?
I would
Yes.
love it.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Perfect.
yes, please. I was going to ask that. I love having digital and hard copies, and especially if something like this, that
It's
when you pass that around, I was
it's
like,
our-
oh.
Our number one resource.
Excuse
I
me,
saw you trying to put it on.
does Mike have a copy of it?
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna get you one, Mike. I'm gonna send it to you digitally, but I'll also send one in the mail to you as well.
Does Mike, do you want to add anything here, Mike?
No, I'm just, I have a lot to learn about what you've done and what you're doing, and yeah, just listening and trying to become more familiar. So yeah, nothing to add at this point.
Perfect. Very good. Okay,
Whenever it's time, I'd like to make a comment on this.
absolutely.
And that is when I look at the map of the historic district, and it's what I've noticed over the last 5 years, it's more about individual historic buildings than it is about a historic district. And I think we really need to start looking at it more as a whole of a district, because if you're walking down First Street and the right-hand side of the street's not a historic building, the left-hand side is, there's nobody that's going to know the difference. And in terms of the guests coming here and stuff. So we need to make sure that even if that is not formally in the historic district, which I think it should be, but if it's not, at least anything that happens in there pays respect to the historic district. And it's not just a free-for-all over there.
You're bringing up a great point on several levels. There are several districts already, including the Granary, which did it on their own and applied on their own and became one. But also, I think we should make that better known and more clearly delineated. Also, the last time we had an inventory done, we had very limited funding, and it was a very limited inventory. We spoke of this. There needs to be a more comprehensive, updated inventory of the town and the neighborhoods that way. So that will help us with defining, enlarging, or whatever existing and subsequent districts. So
So-
you're right on.
Just to clarify, we do have our historic downtown and is nationally registered. We tried to do a historic residential district. They came back and they said you didn't have enough examples. Lakota Group suggested going back to them and saying you need to look at the craftsman style. So there's a lot of really
As a
great,
subset.
yeah, possibility there.
Right. Well, and that was my other point here is that we need to have around the core of the town an overlay. And there's some buildings that are in some of these outside of the historic districts, but that are in this book here, that would to me be an overlay district of some sort that would be more respectful of the craftsman traditions and the historical traditions of the community. And it's just not a free for all for people to come in and take that down and put in a fourplex, you know.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I just feel pretty strongly that these are really big ticket items that we need to get focused on because they're real important to us. And we can kind of get off in the weeds on some little projects and not stay focused as a group. And really, you know, we need to really be careful of the forest and swamp trees and stuff.
And that underlines something that I guess I felt like was hammered into me recently. And that's that the National Register is a great thing ceremonially, and it's wonderful to have it, but it really doesn't have much teeth. We need to enact, as many other locales have of all kinds, local districts, ordinances, things like that, that are specific and germane to Sandpoint. And that goes right to your
Right.
point.
And
Right.
you do have experience putting together a historic design overlay district. Is that what you mentioned earlier?
Well, not the actual district, but I've developed properties within a National Historic District and that had a fairly significant set of design guidelines. And what the goal there is it was not to make an exact replica, but to make something that paid respect to the history of it. And it can have some a little more modern elements in it here and there and stuff, but it needs to still pay respect to the district. It's not just, you know, oh, this would be great. And then, you know, as you said, when you sit around that thing for the Bridge Street building that's 6 stories tall, you know, it wouldn't take a lot of work on changing the facades a little bit and stuff. And at this point, a fairly inexpensive thing to make that really be something that can be respectful of the historic district rather than just this free for all that they're sitting there then selling and saying, and we're right next to the Sandpoint Historic District, you know, and, you know,
Respectful and compatible.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I also had a comment on the arts too, and that is, have we ever participated in an American for the Arts prosperity study that goes through and does this whole, it's an incredible study, and it goes through and it lays out the whole economic benefits that are driven by the arts community, and they update that every 4 to 6 years.
Actually, Idaho.
I think it was mentioned in the Lakota when we were going through the master plans things, but I'm not sure
Well,
without double
Stewart
checking.
also came and did some
Yeah,
workshops, didn't
he
he?
did.
Yes.
I know when I worked at POAC, I would contribute to that study.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah,
would
we
have
did
a
too.
survey that you would complete and they conglomerate all of that information.
Right. And
But that
so-
was just an Idaho state study, if I'm
Yeah, they were doing. some
remembering
as well
right.
through the-
Well, anyway, there's some good information. And what happens is that you just get totally blown away by the numbers.
Yeah.
And what it is it represents a segment of our society that doesn't get represented much in other more traditional ways of economic development and stuff. And so it gives them a bit of an ear, but you know, like this small community we were in, Crested Butte, Colorado, it was like $13 million a year. in
What was the
economic
population?
1,500 people. you
Wow.
know. I mean, you know, it's just incredible because you get people walking up and down Main Street, you know, and you go to places like the Burl Wood Shop there. You know, he's not sitting on any of these things or anything, but he's an artist.
Mhm.
You know, everything he does there, and that's all economic development
Oh,
and
wow.
stuff. And so
Yeah,
you know, so you try and figure out how to pull all this stuff into this thing. And then when you have these numbers and you're in front of the city council and stuff, and you can say, you know, this is what our organization represents to this community.
Mhm.
And it's in numbers and it's in a quantified method. So
And they did do some studies in the master plan on arts along those lines and listed, like, I loved how you said the Burlwood designer. There's also like publishers. I don't think we really
Right.
think about them as artists, but authors. I mean, think about art, as a broad scale.
all these guitar makers and I
Right,
mean, yeah,
they're
we got a lot of different aspects. in
Also,
this
the
community.
festival once, and it's been a while
Festival,
now,
yeah.
did an economic impact survey, and I believe, and this was probably 6, 7 years ago, but I believe it said there was $3 million of direct impact just from the festival time of year. And
Right.
obviously that would be probably more now, but I think all of these things can help us in our missions.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I think it's going to be really interesting when we put the NEA grant out to see who comes to us and defines themselves in terms of art. So
Will that grant be open to individuals or
it
just
will not,
nonprofits?
arts organizations. Perfect. Any other comments or anything that you'd like to put on the agenda or for future thought?
Just wanted to underscore, so it looks like we've got it planned to be the 4th Thursday of the month ongoing. Just wanted
Yes.
to make
Does
sure.
that still work for everybody? It seemed to really
Yes,
work well, so I thought I'd keep that. And everybody likes the idea of kind of sticking within the hour and then having sub conversations on particular projects. If it makes sense, okay,
getting the work
that will be
done.
my goal, absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate all of your recommendations for topics. They're definitely huge things that I've been studying and but I really like Hannah's point about, and I'm going to get you hard copies and send you a digital. We really need to dive into that master plan, because as soon as I started just dissecting that, it's all just right there. They did all the homework of identification for us. And of course, we'll have new ideas. But one thing to think about is I do like the idea of starting with low-hanging fruit, especially for a public art project. So let's look at some suggestions that have been made historically for public art, and then kind of go from there. And I'm going to present a couple of options to you in the next meeting about some ideas that I've identified. And I also have been wrapping my mind around a historic design overlay district and what that would mean. I feel like more than ever, historic preservation is something we really need to be focused on as all this development is happening. So know that it's on my radar, and I'll be working with you guys and presenting some things. There's been some really great work done historically with our community and some stakeholder groups on what that would look like and what we need for our historic downtown.
Small thing, but you're just reminding me to be mindful of deadlines each year for orchids and onions submissions.
So Steve's bringing up a program with the State Idaho Historic Preservation, and our Historic Preservation Commission has been really great at nominating buildings for a program called Orchids or Onions. It's like a great example of historic preservation or not. The first one was in 1985 for the Canada, which I thought was really fun. And I can send that out to you all if you want. I've done the research on what's been nominated and who's been nominated. Nancy Rink was nominated as a distinguished historian. So you can nominate people too. So I do believe that
And the only
that's,
time we hosted it here, only time I believe north of southern Idaho, was partly for the Amtrak station restoration and partly
it was
for
beautiful.
at the Sandpoint Event Center.
Mhm.
And we actually drew more here than they draw in Boise usually.
Wow.
Think about that population
It
wise.
got me interested in the group for sure. So that's definitely something we'll be continuing to do. And we have so many amazing historic preservation examples that we can be submitting that haven't been yet. That would be wonderful. So we'll be talking about that for the future as well. So as you can see, we have a lot of important projects and big things that are impacting our community in a really big way. And I'm so excited about you all. You're all very talented and have great backgrounds. And I believe that we can do a wonderful job balancing history and culture and preservation and figuring out how to look at each project through the lens of all three of those. I am so thankful to you, Mike, for joining us and representing the Kalispel tribe. And we've been so excited to have their voice, and we're looking forward to getting to know more about how we can include their culture in our community. So we'll be working closely with you. Any more comments or anything to mention?
I was gonna say, your low-hanging fruit comment just brings me back to the Silver Box project. Just so you know, maybe that would be something that we can just have a subcommittee, rework that RFP, put it out, because there's $5,000 still left in the SURA budget for that. So we could do it for another year with probably not a lot of
Perfect.
issues. And, that would be, we could have press releases, things like that, say, we're back,
I love it.
here we are.
I would like to invite you. We are in the midst of a ginormous project. We own the old city hall on 110 Main Street, and we are on the journey of renovating it. We have done the Little Carnegie Concert Hall. We have installed the new fire doors, new old fire doors, and Heather and I were working together to let the glory of the old building emerge, so that the past that we can in the present detail the past so that we can take it into the future and make this a gem to be enjoyed by the whole community. It might be fun for you to stop by and see what we've done so far and what we're planning on doing. We found the bell. Many of you may have heard about the bell story, and that we are wanting to reconstruct the bell tower, and that we have a 3-phase, 5-year kind of plan to do so. And we of course want to invite the community to join us in our journey, and everyone, and to see if we can make this a really wonderful interactive historic building with a high level of accessibility. So we are in the midst of it. This project lives between courage and madness. We never know where we are in the morning, right? But we had the courage to buy it.
You have the donor parrot, so you'll be fine.
We hope so. The donor parrot is
And when Karen mentions my name, I'd like to insert the museum, worked with the music conservatory, but we did intimately work together as well on that project and finding the bell, doing interpretive panels, helping them understand the history, being on the building committee. And I am no longer with the museum. I am as a volunteer, and they're in my heart. And Hannah's representing the museum here. But thank you for bringing that all up. But I just wanted to sincerely thank you all so much for your time. I am so excited about what we have planned for the future. So if there's no future business for this commission, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 4:56. Wow, less than an hour. We're amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We're just warming up.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick, I gave everybody one.